Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. This is the last live stream of 2024. So I'll be back in 2 weeks, whatever that date is in January. If you haven't attended these before, it's a quick catch up with the major stuff going on in markets next week, the major announcements to watch. And then we'll have a look at what's happened in markets over the last week, and of course, a lot has happened. It's been quite a tumultuous week, really. After I was complaining a little bit that markets, US markets in particular, looking at the S&P, had all gone a bit boring over the last couple of weeks, and of course, pow, that was anything but the case on Wednesday when we had the US interest rate decision and the press conference saying that they will, inferring, I think, that there'll only be 2 rate cuts next year and not the 3 expected. And as we know, markets all hate it when stuff like that happens. So we saw this big sell-off. So yeah, it's been quite a week for quite a few markets. There's the S&P. The dollar moved to a 2-year high. It's been a bit choppy since then. So we'll take a look at this stuff. I was the wrong way around coming in to that announcement. So I was long a couple of stock indices, long pound against the dollar. So I got stopped out on that move, which is fair enough, you know. But we'll have a look at this stuff in a second. So we'll whiz through some of the housekeeping stuff as usual. I can't see how many people here. I don't think there's that many people. Not surprising because it's almost that time of year, isn't it? So if today's is quite quick, then that's fine. But as usual, if there's any markets you want looking at, if you put it in the chat while I'm live on YouTube, and we'll take a look at them. Anyway, let's go through the risk warning. This presentation is only for educational purposes. This presentation does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Okay, next week. Not surprisingly, it's a quiet week next week because it is Christmas. So markets, I think the FX market opens on Boxing Day. Is it Boxing night? It opens again, or maybe it's even earlier than that because the Asian markets are open, but European and American markets won't be open again until the 27th. Of course, they're open on Christmas Eve, the 24th. But I think probably a lot of them close early. Anyway, whatever. Next Monday, we've got UK GDP. So the UK economy, how well or not is the UK economy doing? And on Thursday, we've got Japanese inflation. So that's pretty much it for the week, which is good because I think markets could do with a bit of a rest after the week we've had. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's start off as usual, stock market indices. Yeah, it was a big move. You know, these are the dailies now, the daily charts on the this is the S&P first of all. Big move. Does it change the big trend? For me, not yet. So I am still a buyer of the dip. You probably won't be surprised to hear until the dip stops dipping. You know, Wednesday's move took the market back to where it was in mid-November. It's moved a bit lower overnight again. So we're trading back at early November levels. But in the great scheme of things, we look at this trend a lot, don't we? That's the trend. You know, we go back to COVID, the trend looks like that. At some point, this trend is going to end. But for me, as a trend follower, the profitable side of the market has been betting that sell-offs are buying opportunities. So that's where I still am on that, even though I don't have an S&P trade open at the moment. I've still got lots of S&P ETFs in my pension and my ISAs and stuff like that. But yeah, so that for me, I think is interesting. It is interesting that we've had this big sell-off. I'd like to be a buyer. It's probably highly unlikely that I'll do anything now before 2025. So let's see what happens. But I'd be a buyer, you know, and I think it's only if we start to lose these October lows, I think, does it start to look like perhaps there's a bigger reversal. So an interesting end to the year, not the Santa rally that perhaps some were expecting. That doesn't mean it can't still happen. We could have the market could absolutely roar higher next week. So let's see. But I'm still, you know, a buyer of the dip. That's where I am on that. Nasdaq, same on the Nasdaq. You know, the Nasdaq's hit all-time highs on Monday, up above 22,000, and here we are below 21,000. You know, so again, you know, the Nasdaq has had a great run this year. Oh, I've got the wrong trend line, but again, for me on the trend is still up. You know, so blah. That's what I say to that, and I think it's only, you know, if it starts to break below, let's say 20,000, the early November highs, then I think, okay, are we going to see a bit more of a sell-off? But for now, it's a buy the dip. The Dow, I mean, the Dow has been hit, you know, quite hard. That's lost 3,000 points since a week last Wednesday. What's that? About 7% drop in the Dow. Interesting. Going into this afternoon. Lows for November are 41.6. The market is 42,300. So that's 700 points above those lows. It doesn't look that much, does it? But it shows the size of the moves we've had this week. So there's a level to watch. But I don't have too much to say about US stock markets. Big old sell-off. Big trends aren't changed. I think it makes for a really interesting start to 2025. So that's all good for me. And of course, I'm going to say the same about the European markets. You know, if you look at something like the DAX hit fresh all-time highs up here, Friday the 13th, just a week ago. That's been knocked back about 1,800 points, something like that. Is it 1,800 points? Am I doing the maths wrong there? Yes, I am doing the maths wrong. 800 points. But the trend is still up. So again, I think, well, do we see a bit of stability come in on that? And I'd be a buyer of the dip somewhere. I run a WhatsApp group, and I mentioned in the WhatsApp group this morning that perhaps the old highs around about 19.6, this sort of area, the old highs 19.7, might be a level, you know. But let's see. I think, you know, the market still seems a little bit shell shocked. I think following the surprise or that statement on Wednesday night about the interest rates. So that's European markets. Let's see what happens with the US markets. Japanese market, Nikkei, not a lot to say on that. Been a bit sideways since the summer, really. Had that big sell-off in July into August. Bounces back, been a bit sideways, nothing too exciting. So yeah, for me on stock markets, just waiting to see where it all calms down, you know, and I wouldn't be a buyer today because it slipped lower yesterday. So for me, I want to see a bit more stability. Even though there's the S&P on the hourly chart. Let's flip it to 10 minutes. We've had a good run in the last hour and a half or so. The market's moved about 60 points, you know, but I want to see it settle. So to be honest, I won't be doing anything today. Wait for it all to calm down. And let's see what happens. The dollar index. I mean, this is interesting because it moved to a 2-year high. You know, that's the move on Wednesday on the interest rates. Moves up to a 2 years high. Not that much follow through since then, but you know, these are the best levels since November 22. So I think that's an interesting one to watch for the rest of the year. If I was going to buy it, I'd rather buy a deeper pullback. So let's see. You know, again, it's a bit of a watch and wait market for me at the moment. Dollar index. So, but maybe be a buyer of the dip there. Then there's the likes of gold, which again has had a bit of volatility, but I'd probably buy it. You know, if I had to do anything, I'd be a buyer of gold with a stop, maybe the other side of 25.35. But there's not. I mean, it's probably coming across that there's not a lot out there jumping out at me from a conviction point of view at the moment. And it's that time of year, isn't it, where you think, well, everyone's minds are on other things, not what's going on so much in financial markets. Silver, we did have the bounce. There was the trend in silver. Bang, 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 silver. But that's fallen out of the trend line. I would give that a second chance and be a buyer. But again, not yet. Again, up until yesterday, it was still sliding. Let's see where it is next week. So maybe there's a trade on silver with stops the other side of 27.70 or something, the lows. So perhaps next week or in the new year. That'll be interesting. But there's nothing at the moment so far that's really jumping out. Oil continues to be pretty boring, which is something I haven't said for oil in many years, but it has been a boring year for the price of oil. This was, 2020, famously, of course, in COVID, when it all started getting locked down, we had negative oil. If anyone is around long enough to remember that, I think oil traded to minus $38 a barrel. Minus $38 a barrel for the May 2020 contract because there was nowhere to store it. There was real storage issues. That was then, wasn't it? So the cash market was down to $10, $12, up at $130 in 2022 on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then this year, actually for more like 18 months or so, all a little bit sideways in a very tight range, relatively speaking, for oil over the last couple of months. So a bit dull. Oil still bumbling around these big lows from the last 18 months around $64. Nothing too exciting. Natural gas, of course, we can always rely on natural gas to deliver some volatility when everything else is a bit boring. I mean, natural gas has broken out to new highs for the year. It had been a bit of a sideways year for natural gas with 345, the high for the year, 155, let's call it the low. So massive volatility as usual, but no real direction for gas, for about 18 months. But in the last couple of days, pow, it has broken out to fresh highs for the year. Let's see what happens. Let's see, is it going to hold it? Is it false breakout? All that sort of stuff. So that's interesting. I don't know what I'd do. I'd rather buy a dip again on gas, but I'm not that compelled to do too much at the moment when it comes to the natural gas price. Let's see what happens there with that. One to watch. Bitcoin. I mean, I'd be a buyer of the dip on Bitcoin. We've had the move through up to 108,000 on Bitcoin. It's got slammed back, so it was 92,000 just an hour or so ago. So what's that? It's a 16% move near enough, isn't it? Something like that. 15% drop from Tuesday. And this is a big level. So for me, if I wanted to buy Bitcoin, that's probably the most interesting thing today, which just shows if I'm saying Bitcoin's the most interesting thing to watch, it shows how bad things are everywhere else or how on the fence I am with everything else. But interesting. We had this level before the breakthrough 100K, around about 90, 91 on Bitcoin was support. Interesting to see if this holds. Do all the FOMOs, the fear of missing out, does all pile in now into this drop in Bitcoin and we push it back up through 100K? Let's see what happens. But after that, 85,000 is the low, the big low again from mid-November. So I would expect a bounce in Bitcoin from here. Let's see what happens. I mean, the big trend is up on Bitcoin, obviously. Where was Bitcoin a year ago? Let's do our shoulda, coulda, woulda. Where could we have bought Bitcoin December last year? About 41 grand. So it's more than doubled in a year. Okay. So yeah, there we go. Interesting to see if that holds on the coin this afternoon and into Christmas. I presume Bitcoin's I bet Bitcoin's trading on Christmas Day, isn't it? That'll be one. If you're bored of talking to your family, I bet there'll be a price on Bitcoin somewhere to have a punt on Christmas Day. But that's interesting. 92,000 on Bitcoin. Pound against the dollar. I was long the pound against the dollar as well going into that announcement, and that's really gone crashing through some levels. That's another one. It all depends obviously on what the dollar does. Whether we get a bounce here, but I still favour a bounce in the pound. But again, it's still weak as of today. It's still a bit weak. We've got the lows for the year actually. So from 123 to 124.5, the lows for the year. The market's 125.5 at the moment. Let's see what happens. Again, I'm not in a rush to do anything. on that until the new year starts. It's all ending a bit mixed, isn't it? It's a bit disappointing, but there you go. So that's pound against the dollar. Euro dollar. Euro's weaker, obviously, because we've had the euro will be at a 2-year low because the dollar index is at a 2-year high. So that's the euro. Euro sterling, taking the dollar out of the equation. I think this is maybe interesting. I haven't traded it for a long time, probably a couple of years. But this 82 level, euro against the pound, big support back in 2022. It's the lows from 2022. It was like the post-Brexit levels reached on the referendum vote in the UK in June 2016. So interesting to see if 82 holds up for euro sterling. The trade I should have done this week and didn't was sterling yen. That was a good trade. I think I mentioned it in the WhatsApp group, but I was long sterling against the dollar, and I would have been a buyer. Anyway, it drifted off a bit, and then it went like a rocket on the interest rate decision. So I think sterling yen is quite an interesting market. I'd be a buyer of sterling yen. Takes the dollar out of the equation. The closest I'd want my stop though is definitely the other side of 194. So I think that's an interesting market. See what happens with that one. But yeah, with the dollar, sort of, what's going on with the dollar? Are we going to see it? Is this the start of a major move, or is it going to drop back into the range? Stuff could go either way at the moment, so I'm not really too convinced either way on that. Let's look at some stuff that is moving. So a lot of the financials, perhaps a little bit in limbo land at the moment, but some of what's going on in commodities, I think, is interesting, and perhaps some markets to watch next year. I mean, coffee hit all-time highs in December. What's coffee done this year? Coffee's gone from 190 to 328. So what's that? 130, 140. So about 60% move in coffee, something like that. That's interesting, I thought. Cocoa, which was a real strong performer early 2024. The price of cocoa, I think, tripled in price by March, by April. All went a bit sideways. Bang, 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 bang. And off we go again. Broken out again the last few days. I think that's an interesting move, obviously, after going sideways in this massive range, this sort of 50% swing that we had in cocoa. It's broken out again. So I think that's an interesting one. And orange juice. I think I'd like to be a buyer of orange juice. I'm going to be a buyer in the new year if it all still looks okay. So orange juice, the big trend is up going back to 2022. I mean, you'd have quadrupled your money on orange juice if you'd have bought it 3 years ago. That's not a bad return, is it? Harry hindsight trade, of course, the best sort of trades. So orange juice was 124 in December 21, and it's 531 today. So yeah, it's all right now. So but great uptrend, bang, 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 bang. We had all these false breakouts in the summer in orange juice, September, and then October, and is this the real one? So for me, I think I don't know, but I'm going to buy the dip when the dip stops dipping. So that might actually be a trade that I do before Christmas. It might be the last thing I do this year, is a more longer term trade on the price of OJ, as the Americans say. So because it's broken out to all-time highs. Let's see. And when it comes to a stop, I would probably want my stop the other side of 458, the lows from that whole sideways messing about period in September and October. So I think that's interesting. So everything else is definitely been a very interesting week. I am treating this weakness in US stocks as a buy the dip opportunity. It is still dipping, so I am not buying until it stops dipping. So yeah, that's it. So what we'll do now, we'll have a look at the stuff you want to look at. A quick commercial break. I run a WhatsApp group. I will be updating it over Christmas for anyone who's in the group. If you don't want to join it now because it's Christmas, join in the new year. I'll talk about it more in the new year. But I run it, blah, blah, blah. I use the code YouTube to get 20% discount off the first month. I run a trading course, obviously. And also the broker I trade with, I'm going to do more with them in the new year. But I trade with them. I often show it down here, don't I? I can link it into my... I got a trade on from some live stream we did. I can link it into my trading view thing. If you go to bit.ly/David Trade, give them a go. You can trade small, which is a good thing if you don't have much money to trade with or you're just starting in trading. The spreads are tight, which is another good thing. The cost of trading is low. And you can link it into TradingView, which for me is a good thing because it means I can see my positions, where I bought stuff, where I put stops in, all of that stuff. Okay, so that is bit.ly/David Trade, and the links should be in the description to this video. All right, let's have a look at whatever it is you want looking at. Let's have a look. Have you been watching the price action of, what's that? Dollar NUKKK. No, I haven't, because I've never heard of it. Nucleus, what is this? Oh, it's one of these crazy stocks, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, there's no way this sort of nonsense can be predicted. You know, look at this stock, right? 2024, it goes from $18 down to $1.13. And then the last 4 days, it's gone, what's it gone from? $1.39 to $80. It's a Christmas miracle, isn't it? What do they do? Is it AI or some ridiculousness that they do? Hang on a second. Let's have a look. Strategic 10 million private placement priced above blah blah blah. What do they do? Nucleus for it's not. It's coming up as an NGO, a non-governmental organisation. Is that what they are, or is it a different one? Maybe it is. Anyway, whatever. Crazy. Yeah. I mean, there's no point in me saying anything about that, is there? I mean, that's just like, if you're in it, you're really happy. And if you invested in it back here, you'd probably be finally getting your money back. But blah, no. Right, next. What have we got next? Hang on a second, I've lost the questions. Any top tips to buy for 2025? Nick, I don't know. I wonder, you know, with some of these moves in commodities, you know, with the likes of, you know, the stuff we've looked at, what I'm going to refer to as the breakfast complex, you know, coffee and orange juice doing all-time highs. I wonder, are we going to see, you know, are we going to see inflation coming back? Are we going to see some of these agricultural commodities have a good year next year? So coffee, you know, is one. Orange juice, talked about that a bit, is another. You know, these markets are still strong. And then other things like soybeans, you know, soybeans hit a multi-year low again yesterday. So I wonder if some of the agricultural stuff is perhaps more interesting. Sugar, I've mentioned that in the WhatsApp group. I think, you know, sugar, I thought that was breaking out of its downtrend in September. And it's gone up, and it's coming all the way back down again. You know, so that's maybe interesting. So no, there's nothing in my head that seems, oh, that looks like a really good long-term trade in 2025. I mean, I'm clearly still bullish on stock markets, you know, but at some point that is going to end, but who knows when it ends, you know. It's how long are we going up for now? Since, when was the low? October 22 was the last major low. Okay, so we're 2 years into that, aren't we? How long did the COVID rally last? March 2020 to Jan 22. So not quite 2 years. So maybe it is getting long in the tooth in stock markets. Obviously, we always get an itchy nose on these live streams. Obviously, there's Mr. Trump coming in next year as well. That could change things. Well, it will change things, won't it? But how the stock market, I mean, so far the stock market seems to not mind it at all. So let's see. Yeah, but I'm going in very much with an even more open mind than usual, I think, into 2025 as to what might do well. Can we have a look at AMAT and QCOM? AMAT and QCOM. AMAT is like, I'd give it a check. I mean, if it's going to bounce from anywhere, we're here, aren't we? It's sort of fallen through that trend line. We've clearly looked at this before. I would have been a buyer whenever we looked at it last time. So I'd be underwater at the moment. If it slipped much lower, it looks like that trend really is coming to an end, doesn't it? So yeah, I'd be giving it one last chance to have a bounce. Qualcomm, same with Qualcomm. We clearly did that before. And I would have been, so if I'd have been looking at that there, I'd have been a buyer with a stop the other side of 150. Let's say 145 would be my stop on that. So I'd still be in. But again, you know, with these things pushing through their previous lows, it's a little bit, does look a bit thingy. I shorted the VIX an hour ago. Do you know what? Good luck with it. But I don't think I've ever met anybody who's ever made any money trading the VIX. because I mean, it had that crazy move. Obviously, it jumped. What did it jump? 50%. Actually, short. If I had to trade it, I would be short as well. So yeah, let's see what happens. But I don't trade it myself, the VIX. But it jumped. Well, it nearly doubled actually on that interest rate thing. So it's the volatility index. For those of you not familiar with the VIX, it's the volatility index based off S&P options pricing. How much fear is there in the market? The fear index, as it is referred to. And you can see we get these spikes like COVID times, the sell-off in the summer, and then it all just drifts away again. Do you think Nvidia has lost momentum? Didn't they launch was there not, I saw on Twitter, some computer or something like they'd launched. I think, you'd still say the trend is up, isn't it? As usual. It's, I don't know. It's where does your stop go, I'd be a buyer, I wouldn't be a buyer yet. But I'd be a buyer, and I'd probably want to stop at least the other side of 110. So, but I am I'm surprised how I really am not committed to much at the moment. I think there's been we had a period of boringness, and we've had this sort of big sell-off this week. So it's time for the bull market to prove itself again, for the buyers to come back in. So I would be. Nvidia, obviously the trend is up. I'd be a buyer, but I wouldn't be in a hurry to buy just yet. I'd be quite happy to sit on my hands. What do you think of Boeing? Boeing. I thought it was quite weak last time we looked at it, wasn't it? And it has bounced, okay. It has bounced. There's a lot of lines on that chart, isn't there? I mean, what would you do? I don't know. I would probably, if I had to do anything, I would be tempted to go short, yeah? And take the view. It's very rare that markets make a handbrake turn. Look at Boeing last time round, it turned. Right, hit a low in May 22, rallied and went back to the low again. So for me, it's interesting because maybe it is finally starting to turn the corner. But I would say let's have another look at 140 maybe. So I'd look to go short Boeing. That would be the trade I would do on Boeing. But interesting, let's come back to it in the new year and see if it's turned around. What's your opinion on Mu, Micron, buy the dip? I mean, they had a big gap yesterday. I would be patient. So much of this stuff at the moment, I would be patient on. Personally, obviously, you do what you want to do. But I'm quite happy to be patient, because this is Micron technology. It's today hit its lowest since February. Let's see. Do we see the buyers step in? That's it again, isn't it, really? Do we see the buyers step in? And Shopify, I would buy the dip, and again, it's still a bit weak for me today, but I'd absolutely buy that. Quite scrappy, but yeah, I would buy that, but not yet. I'd wait till next week or maybe, excuse me, the new year to buy that. I mean, for me, if I had an aggressive stop, it would be too tight a stop for me, but the other side of 102. But I would want I would definitely want a wider stop than that. It's still a little bit weak for the week, isn't it? So yeah, but that's probably the best one I think we've seen today. I'd say, what's that? Shopify. That's perhaps the most interesting. But one for next week or the new year for me. Are there any meme stocks that you ever tempted by, even though they're ridiculous? No, I did look. It's a good question that, but there aren't many meme. Are there any meme stocks anymore? There's GameStop. I mean, there is GameStop. I mean, when did that start? GameStop 2021, 3 years ago. I did a video for somewhere I used to work about, I don't know, when it was about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and we looked at performance in meme stocks, and basically, unless you were in right at the start, it was very hard to have made any money. So yeah, so there's the old the king of the meme stocks, of course, GameStop, still not doing very much at all, and I can't even remember any others. Wasn't there? Was it AMC Entertainment, something like that? I can't even remember. Oh my God! Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Wow, $80 to $380, down to $4. Oh, sad times. Not a Christmas miracle. So yeah, how has 2024 been for you profit-wise compared to previous years? It's been all right. It's not been, from a trading point of view, it's not been as profitable as, it's been about the same as 2023, not as profitable as 2022. But I've done some different things with trading. I've done more day trading, this year, experimenting a bit with that. So that has been, you know, I've done some different things. I'm looking to do some different things next year. So it's been okay. The bit, again, as usual, well, not as usual, the big winner for me, you know, I talked about it before a lot over the years. Pretty much 90% of my investments is S&P and NASDAQ ETFs, you know, and even with the sell-offs this week, you know, the NASDAQ's still up, the S&P, sorry, is still up about 30% over the last 12 months, something like that, you know. So for me, that's continues to be my best financial decision, doing nothing and just putting money into those, you know. So I've got a couple of I don't even know what they are. Here you go, Invesco Markets, S&P 500 ETF, and this one, where is it? Where's the NASDAQ one? iShares NASDAQ ETF, clearly taking a bit of a hit this week, but yeah, I mean, they've done, where did they come in? So they were 960 and they're 1200 today, so what's that, 240, whatever that is, 25% return for the year, something like that. So yeah, so that's you know, the investment side continues to do okay. I've still got a few little shares, but 90% of it is that. So the trading's been okay. I've spent less time in front of the screens, which has been good for me. I've caught some, you know, good trades. I've given back this week. I've given back a few weeks' profit this week. You know, I was in the what was I in? I was in the NASDAQ trades before the election. And that was a good, so that made about 1,000 points profit, something like that. So I've given back some of that with the stops out this week. So it's been all right, you know. And we'll see what next year. I think what I want to try and do next year, and I'm sure I said at the beginning of this year, is get more back to the longer term stuff. You know, trends like this, you know, trends like, so try and make sure I do at least one or two longer term trades a month, you know, because I can see obviously how well the NASDAQ and S&P investments have done over the years. There are lots of markets that have strong trends, like orange juice, so far at least, you know, so I want to try and get back into doing some of this as well as continuing all the other stuff I do, because I do have plenty of time to have a look at this stuff. So that's going to be my new year resolution, is to do more of the long term stuff. Otherwise, we're finished, aren't we? We're finished for the year. I went for a swim this morning. I drove past the school about 12:30, and I was sitting there thinking about markets, obviously. But there was all these kids coming out because they're all finished early, I think, finishing a half day, and they all looked so happy. They were up to like late teenagers from about 8 years old or something, and they all looked very happy. And I thought, that's it. That's what Christmas is all about, isn't it? All this time of year, it's not about agonising over whether the S&P is going to bounce or where the top is in the dollar index. And it was really heartening to see that everyone looked so happy. So I hope you have a good time over Christmas. If you celebrate it, if you don't, you get some time off anyway. I'll be back in 2 weeks, 2 weeks today, which is, I think, is it the 2nd of January from memory? I don't know. But for those of you in the WhatsApp group, I'll still be in the WhatsApp group. It's the 3rd of January. So I'll be back on the 3rd of Jan. We'll kick things off. Interesting to see what happens with these markets. It is, for me, it's a mysterious end to the year, should we say, wondering whether these trends are going to continue. And I'm assuming they are going to continue. So, you know, that's it. I'm absolutely going to be back in buy the dip mode in the S&P in January. So we'll see how that all works out. Otherwise, that's it. We'll wrap things up there. Thanks for coming along and watching this year and liking and subscribing and all that other YouTuber nonsense. But thanks for that. Much appreciated. And yeah, I'll be back in January. If you're going to do any trading over the next few days, good luck with your trading. Otherwise, see you in the new year. Go to the website to find out more about the stuff I do. And then if you want to try a new broker, I can heartily recommend the ones I trade with, bit.ly/DavidTrade. Otherwise, we are done. Have a great time and see you in a couple of weeks. Okay, bye then.